Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Hi, Foffit. You've reached Mel from Bella, the podcast that feels like a voice note from your best friend. Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. If you're a new listener, I am so excited that you're here. Welcome to the Inner Group Chat. And if you are a returning listener, I am so glad you came back. Because again, we have so much to catch up on. This week's podcast episode is going to be about why failing my A-levels and not getting onto the course that I applied for was actually the best thing that could have happened to me. Because I see all of you listening to the episode on exam stress, and I feel like one of the big parts about exams is associating your self-worth with it. But I also think it's as much as I can say, don't worry about it, you're worth more than this. Sometimes it's helpful to find out about the worst case scenario happening and it actually working out even better than the original plan did. So I wanted to give you some real life example of where, that didn't go to plan, but it actually ended up being so much of a better plan. Because often we choose these things that we want to happen in life. We choose a direction that we want to go in and we think that's absolutely what we want, forgetting that we actually don't always know what we want. We think we know ourselves, we think what we know we want, we think we know ourselves best, but truthfully, we are constantly learning about ourselves. We're constantly growing into who we want to be. We're constantly evolving into a new version of ourselves. When you're placed in new surroundings, new environments, like a little scientific experiment, you're tested again and you grow again. And I think that's why we don't always know what's best for us. Sometimes we make decisions and it turns out not to be the right ones and we don't find out until it's too late. That's why sometimes when those decisions fall through, it can actually be the biggest blessing in disguise ever. And so this week's episode, I wanted to touch on failing my exams and things not going to plan actually being part of the plan, because I think sometimes it's one of the most reassuring things you can hear. But before we get on to that, a bit of a life update for this week's podcast episode. I'm not going to lie, this week has just passed in a blur. Could I tell you what I've done? Not really. Well, actually, I lie. Last weekend, went to Heaton Park for the first time. Why have I never been there before? It was beautiful. It was a massive, massive park. It was sunshine all day, and I literally read my book, played this little bat and ball game, and ate a picnic all day. We were out there for maybe 8 hours. It was such a perfect day and such a nice way to switch off after quite a busy week. And so I'm trying to find more outdoorsy things to do that isn't always hiking. Because the thing is, I love hiking. It's really fun, but sometimes I can't be bothered. Sometimes I've had a really long week and I just don't want to go on a train. It's the travel aspect for me because we're in the city and we don't have a car, we have to get a train if we want to go on any of the nice walks. And last time we rented a car, that ended up being so expensive because we ended up popping the tyre literally outside the rental car place. Literally outside, because we pulled in to drop some rubbish off at a bin and there must have been glass on the floor that we didn't see anywhere, or a nail or something, and it popped the car wheel instantly. So that was slightly stressful, and that's given us, I don't really want to go back and rent another car just in case it ends up being really expensive again, and so we're not going to do that. Instead, haven't been on a walk in ages. But sometimes you can't fit everything in, and that's all right. Sometimes I put too much pressure on myself to do everything all at once, so I'm trying not to do that. And so that was Saturday. Then Sunday, went to a big thrift market. It was in the Victoria Baths in Manchester. I'd never been to that venue before. Really cool. It's like this old, massive swimming pool area, and everything's been drained, obviously. But it's still got all of that you can see the old showers and the changing rooms, and rather than having individual changing rooms, they had the changing rooms all around the outside of the pool, individual changing rooms rather than group ones. So smart and clever. How much better would that be? And honestly, just made me think, I wish we had more outdoor pools here, because I know in London they have the Lidos, but they don't have them in Manchester. The only open water swimming that they do have is in Media City, and I'm just not going swimming in that. I think it does look very clean, but I just feel a bit scared about it being that deep. I need it to be a pool. I think that's what I really need it to be. And so, feeling a bit sad that we don't have an outdoor pool situation. Truthfully, I'm not very good at swimming, so I should probably try and get better at swimming first. But it was really nice to go to a big thrift market. It was kind of overwhelming. Sometimes I get a little bit intimidated, I'll be honest. Sometimes I feel slightly daunted by how many super, super fashionable people are in there, and I get a little bit insecure, and I felt like that. I was walking in and I was like, oh my God, I look awful. Everyone looks so lovely. I should have worn a better outfit, blah, 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 blah. Then I realised, before I stepped foot in that room, I did actually like my outfit. I did think I looked good. I wasn't going out in a knowingly bad outfit, which I have done before and I just can't be bothered. But this one I was felt good, and then saw everyone else and then felt bad. So I thought, no, Not doing that. We can celebrate other people without it being a reflection on me, okay? I can think that your outfit looks great and not have to also think that mine looks bad. It doesn't have to be like that. It's not like an appreciation scales, okay? So that was a good lesson learned. But the market was huge. It was run by Clothes Cycle. It's meant to be the UK's largest thrift market. Not gonna lie, it was huge. It was massive. I got this cute little like vest top that says Italy on it, which I'm gonna wear for the Dolomites. And I got a new ring, which I think I kind of got ripped off for the ring. We're just gonna let it slide. It was an impulsive purchase because I wanted to buy something. Shouldn't have done it. We move. But this weekend is the bank holiday, which is so exciting. I feel like this bank holiday has come out of nowhere. Didn't have any plans for it. Literally people all the week at work asking what I was doing. No plans. No plans whatsoever. And so I've had a quick scramble of ideas of things I want to do. And I think tomorrow I'm going to do like sauna ice baths. There's a few different places in Manchester that do it. They have a sauna at my gym, but I feel like these saunas are nicer. And then I'm going to go to an event on Sunday, which is fun. And then bank holiday Monday, probably just chill, to be honest. Just treat it as like a long weekend. And this is where not working Fridays just comes into its own, to be honest. But I feel like that's enough of me talking about my week. How are you? How has your week been? Are you sitting comfortably? I want to know what you guys do whilst you're listening to podcasts. Because after I spoke last week about like going to the gym or cleaning the house with the podcast, it got me thinking like, what does everyone else do whilst they're listening to me ramble? What do you all do? I'm so intrigued. And so please leave a comment, tell me what you're doing right now. So on to the content part of this week's podcast episode, where we are going to be talking about how I didn't do well in my A-level exams, and it sent me on potentially the biggest spiral I've ever... that's a lie. A large spiral, shall we say, but it actually ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me. And if you told me in that moment, Bella, this actually, big blessing in disguise, would not have believed you, okay? Would have said, you're wrong, this was my dream, I will never recover. In actuality, it was not my dream, and I did not know myself that well. I was just 18, freshly turned 18. No, I wasn't even 18, I was 17 at the time, and a people pleaser, and loved doing everything that everyone told me to do because I thought it made them like me more. In hindsight, this is not the way you should choose your life decisions, and I've learned this. It's taken me to the ripe old age of 25 to learn this, but 17-year-old me feels like a lifetime ago. And I also feel like I just know myself so much more now. I don't know if it's like I don't really remember thinking that much back then. Like, I know I did, but I didn't really think about myself I didn't think about myself as an individual. And I can't explain that, but I just feel like I didn't know myself very well at all. And because I hadn't taken the time to get to know myself, because I hadn't taken the time to explore who I was and didn't feel confident, like standing up and being proud of who I was, it kind of meant that I didn't feel like I knew her. And I don't look back and think, like, it feels like really far away. Really, really far away from the person I am now. And so that's why it's interesting talking about these topics where, things didn't go to plan, but it actually ended up being so much more than ever I could have imagined because it didn't go to plan. So to set the scene, I've always been pretty academic. Okay, I've always done well in school. I've always been all right at exams. It defined my entire life existence. I just knew myself as someone who did. But trick thing here wasn't because I was like naturally really smart. I just did so much studying because the thought of failing gave me so much anxiety. Now I know this is linked to ADHD and it's like negative something. Basically, when I get like bad feedback or I don't do as well as something or I fail a test, I feel it so much more strongly than anyone else would feel it. To me, it is literally like the world is ending. It's literally like the world is ending. And so to avoid that feeling, I worked so hard whilst I was at school. I've never had a chill moment, really, I'm not going to lie. When I was studying for my GCSEs, I was revising up until like 11, 12 p.m. at night. It was mental. They weren't that important. I didn't need to do that. No one has ever asked me for my GCSE grades. Okay, to be honest, when I look for new jobs, like no one even looks at them anymore. And when I talk to like other people and I find out how their GCSE experience was, they just turned up to the exams without revising and just freestyled it, and they've got into good places in life. Now, this isn't for you to listen and be like, oh, I don't need to do any work. This isn't like I don't need to be motivated. You obviously do, and you should try your best. But I just took that to a whole new level. I took it to a level where I put so much pressure on myself and so much like want to be this type of person, to push myself, that then it just made it exhausting. And so because A-levels, I think, GCSEs were more topics but at a lower level of depth and understanding, I did better in them because that suited me more. I'm really good at learning lots of, it's easier for me to remember lots of different things than it is to remember the same thing in lots of detail. I also just found it more interesting having lots of different topics to learn. And so GCSEs did pretty well, I got 5 A's, an A star, a B and a C. 2 B's and a C. So I did all right. Then A-levels come. And I go into A-levels a little bit cocky, I got a lot of A's. I'm all right at this. I can kind of choose. Because I'd done that as well, there wasn't an obvious options for me to choose. And so I chose maths, English, chemistry, biology. We're not even going to talk about that selection. First evidence that I had no idea who I was, because my favourite subject was English language, and that's what I got an A star in. But I didn't think it was a good option to choose because I wasn't sure I could get a job in it. And I just remember choosing based off what I thought I wanted to do at uni, based off what I thought I could do a job in. I chose things based on the safest options. Now, that's not a bad idea, okay? Realistically, the job market's not easy, and it's not a terrible idea to choose it based on that. But it's also, the point of life is to enjoy it. And sometimes I think I focused too early on the things that would have got me further later in life rather than just enjoying learning about that thing then, which is the lesson I actually took in my master's. We're jumping forward a little bit, because in my master's I picked a module that I knew I wasn't going to do as well at, but I found really interesting. And that was like a really tricky experience because I was bad at it. I didn't do that well, but I really enjoyed the lessons and I found it really interesting. And so reminding myself that the goal of this was just to learn, and that a grade, as much as it would be to get a great grade, that's not the goal of this learning experience. It was kind of like a full circle thing of like, I actually, I'd grown since I'd chosen my A-levels. I'd pushed myself to try something else that was out of my comfort zone, and that brought me a lot of joy, but I wasn't naturally good at it. And that was a kind of reminded me that we're always growing. You're always changing. So I did my A-levels. It was awful. I hated chemistry passionately. Biology, loved, did quite well in that. English language is... And then I was doing physics. Hated physics. Was an awful choice. Very, very bad. Not my forte. I can do maths, but not to the level of maths A-level. I'm not into it like that level of into it. I'm way more of an English literature person, okay? Look at the podcast, okay? I'm a chatterbox. I am not a mathematician, really. I am not, doing math. I'm not a physics vibe. That's not me. And so dropped physics, went to English literature, had to catch up on a term's worth of work in 2 weeks. Did it, ended up getting an A in it at A-level. And I look back at that entire kind of experience of what happened, and I just think when things are meant for you, we've spoken about it a bit on the podcast, but when things are meant to be the things for you, you should find them easy, and you'll do well in the things that you find easy. And I think there's this careful balance of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, doing things you find difficult, but I don't think you should always find things impossible. You should be able to find some elements of it come easily to you. It should feel, I guess, it doesn't always have to be easy. What I'm trying to say is there shouldn't feel like there's loads of friction. When I was learning physics, I was genuinely like, I hate this. I hate it. It's not for me. And looking at that now is me realising that didn't come easily to me. It was never something that I enjoyed, which meant studying for it was going to be really hard, which meant I was going to find doing well at that difficult because it didn't come naturally to me. I was going to have to work really hard at it, and I didn't enjoy working for it. So it's not creating an environment that is going to help me learn or is going to make me want to learn. And so dropping that and getting my A-level results, when I sat my A-level exams, it was an interesting one, okay? English was okay. Biology, I thought I did really well in it. Chemistry, shocking. Really, 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 really shocking. But the issue with my biology exam is I misread the final question, which was like a 25-mark question. Misunderstood it. ADHD, skim read it, didn't read it properly, put down the wrong answer, stopped me getting an A. But it's okay, we don't need to dwell on that. But chemistry I found near enough impossible. I left my final exam, my final A-level, and I thought I'd feel this level of celebration. I just cried. But now, I got my A-level results on a family holiday with my entire extended family. Okay? Entire extended family. In top 10 worst places to receive bad news or news that is disappointing, it's probably surrounded by 20 of your extended family. Not because I don't love them and not because I didn't want to share it with them, but because in that moment I didn't want to have to talk about it. I wanted to run away, I wanted to hide, I didn't want to discuss it with anyone. And the worst thing about A-level results day is that you get your offer from the university before you get your grades released to you. Like, sometimes there was a bit of a lag in the system, and because I was in France, I got them, like, something happened that I got my university result before I actually found out my grades, and I found out I didn't get on the course. It was like, your offer has not been accepted. And I was like, what do you mean my offer has not been accepted? What do you mean my offer has not been accepted? And I went into this absolute meltdown, panic, because I'd applied to go to biochemistry. I'd applied for medical biochemistry. There was literally 15 spots for the entire country, and I'd interviewed and I'd got into it. And I was really proud of myself for getting onto it, and it had been loads and loads of work to get there, and I'd got myself one of the spaces, and then I didn't get the grades. And it was really, really disappointing. Like, I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted. But I also wasn't, because it was in that moment that I also realised I didn't want to do chemistry. And I knew in the exam that I didn't want to do chemistry. And I knew all summer that I didn't want to do chemistry. And the thought of doing 3 more years of chemistry was making me feel sick. But I didn't have the guts to say that's not going to be the right thing for me. That's not going to be the thing that I want. And so I just sucked it up and I thought, I'm just going to stick it out and I'm just going to see what happens. And I didn't feel brave enough to say, I don't actually want to do that anymore. And so when I didn't get onto that course and they offered me a different course in microbiology, initially I was a bit shocked because I didn't really think that happened. I didn't think they would be able to offer you a totally different course, but they did. They offered me one straight away. They said, we don't think this one is going to be right for you, but we could offer you this instead. And they were on the phone to me and they were so lovely about it. I ended up doing medical microbiology at university, and it was the most interesting course I could have chosen. And I've always been so grateful for failing chemistry in that moment, because it pushed me towards a path. Like, I didn't even know that course was an option. Okay? The reason I picked medical biochemistry is because my chemistry teacher told me to do it. That was the only reason. That was the only reason, okay? I was a people pleaser, and if someone told me they thought I should do something, I wanted to make them happy, and I just didn't know myself. I didn't have much confidence in myself to find out what I wanted to do, to spend time thinking about it. I didn't really think about what that next step was going to look like. I just wanted to get something sorted. I just wanted to make my future secure, and so I just picked the first thing I thought I could and just applied for it, and applied for it at every single university. And looking back and not getting onto that course really was a pinnacle moment, because of that I ended up doing medical microbiology at university. I then loved that, ended up doing a master's in the control of infectious diseases, which was so interesting. And then from that, it's given me such an interesting view into public health and into kind of a career world which I'd never have heard of before if I hadn't have made if that first thing hadn't have gone wrong. And throughout that entire experience, it reminded me that I'd chosen this path of medical biochemistry, didn't want it, didn't like it, knew within myself, but didn't have the guts to say that I didn't want it. And then I didn't get on the course. And they offered me something that was so much better suited for what I actually wanted. And I ended up in a situation that I didn't even know was possible, but was so much more aligned with the version of my life that I actually wanted to have. You know, it actually ended up working okay. No better than that, it ended up working out great. Because I would have been miserable. Truthfully, I would have been miserable. And it's easy to sugarcoat it. Be like, it would have been fine. It wouldn't have been fine. I didn't want to do it, but I wasn't brave enough to say I didn't want to do it. And so I didn't get the grades to get into my chosen uni course, and I thought it was the end of the world. I genuinely thought the end of the world. But I look back now and realise that was actually the best thing that could have happened to me, because it could push me onto a course that I actually did want to do, that was so much more aligned with who I was and what I wanted to have in my career. And I loved that course so much. And it truly was probably one of the most happiest accidents, blessing in disguises that has ever happened. And it also reminded me that when you don't get the grades to get onto a chosen course, that's because you're not going to be able to thrive on that course. You need a certain level of understanding and capability within a certain area to be able to do well on the course, okay? So not getting onto medical biochemistry a massive blessing in disguise because I wouldn't have done well at it. Okay? And that's not a bad thing to say. Like, I just wouldn't have done well at it. It didn't play to any of my strengths. And instead, I did a course that was totally different and ended up leaving with a first-class honours degree. But that wouldn't have been possible if I'd followed my original plan. Because sometimes the original plan that we make for ourselves isn't actually the right plan for us because we don't know ourselves as well as we think we do. And it's an uncomfortable thing to realise, but it's true. And that's why I have to share this story with you. So however your exams go, I'm not going to say they're going to be really difficult or hard, and you're not going to do well. You're going to do great. You've worked so hard for it. But I just had to remind you that however it goes, life has a weird way of working out. So try not to put too much pressure on it. Try not to put too much expectation on it. Try to just see it for it's just an exam. And whatever happens, you'll make a plan. Because I made a plan and it ended up working out so much better than I could have imagined. But thank you for listening to this week's podcast episode. If you want to send in any questions, situations, things you want us to discuss, make sure you email them to dearbellaadvice@gmail.com. The email is in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you're following me at Mail from Bella on Instagram and on TikTok and on YouTube if you want to watch the podcast there. And I can't wait to catch up with you next week. I love you. Bye. Mwah.